It is, isn't it? Is it anything less or more? No. Okay, we started? Oh, okay, good. Well, I'm going to read something first that came across the ocean to me from a friend in the U.S. And start off by reading a couple of things from the U.S., the other one's from our friend Shirley. Okay, so this is from this is a special World Tribune bulletin. This is from the President of the United States. U.S. President Joe Biden sent a message of condolence to Kaneko Ikeda on the passing of her husband and third Soka Gakkai president, Daisaku Ikeda. President Biden wrote in his message, as a committed leader, bridge builder, and man of action, he dedicated his life to the pursuit of peace and dignity for all. He praised Ikeda Sensei's achievements, writing, "This legacy he leaves behind will be felt around the world for generations to come." Ikeda Sensei passed away on November 15th, 2023 at 95. This means this is the last meeting we're having before the 3 months is up, right? At 95. He stands among the most outstanding leaders in the history of Buddhism, having spread the Soka philosophy of respect and the dignity of life across the globe and expanded the Soka Gakkai's movement for peace to 192 countries and territories. Is it okay? President Biden's condolence message was printed on the 26th, January 26, 2024, Seiko Shimbun, the Soka Gakkai's daily newspaper. Today, January 26th, commemorates the day in 1975 when, so this would have been yesterday to us. Today, January 26th, commemorates the day in 1975 when 158 representatives from 51 countries and territories gathered for the first World Peace Conference on the Pacific island of Guam, the site of intense fighting during the Pacific War. Here, the group established the Soka Gakkai International, naming Daisaku Ikeda as president. Having bore witness to the horrors of war in the 20th century, the founding members vowed to make the forthcoming century a century of life. Sensei said on that occasion, the sun of Nichiren Buddhism has begun to rise above the distant horizon. Rather than seeking after your own praise or glory, I hope that you will dedicate your noble lives to sowing the seeds of peace of the mystic law throughout the entire world. I shall do the same. Next year marks the SGI's 50th anniversary. That was from the New Human Revolution, Volume 21, Revised Edition, page 33. So that came from a letter of condolence from Daisaku Ikeda, and then, from Joe Biden. And then I got this letter, a note to me from my good friend Shirley, who is been with us for a while, for a long, long time. You know, I talk about Shirley all the time. She goes, it's about time I wrote to you. I think of you so much that I forgot that I haven't actually made contact with you for some time. It's still a matter of great importance that we take actual action regarding the ideas for spreading the mystic law through Nichiren's Buddhism. I've been introducing the idea of an affiliation with those good women and good men whose existence forces them into rejecting of in-person meetings. I tell them that the pandemic forced us to stay inside both physically and spiritually. We've convinced ourselves that it's going to go normal any day now. Instead, we've attracted more people than SGI realizes, and it's vital that we reach out to people who are practicing through the World Wide Web. Fully aware that SGI promotes face-to-face interaction between leaders and other members, however, meetings of SGI may be impossible for some due to where they live, not only where they live, but if it is somehow keeps the mystic law close to them, then by then it's good. Anyway, I'm working at I'm working at defining the situation and presenting an unassailable logic reason as an impeccable reasoning. Buddhism being reason, the happy problem we have and will add to the movement and the eternal joy of Buddhahood. More later, surely. So I just wanted to say, there are people beyond those of us at this table or myself that are still embracing this idea of SGIP, or internet practitioners of Soka Gakkai. And we'll take it a step at a time. This is, ironically, this is, I believe, going to be the last volume of Teachings for Victory. Okay, you know how many we've gone through, right? This is the very first one where suddenly, while I'm doing the last lecture, the binding broke apart. Okay, as if, Tom, this is where you're supposed to stop. And then you're supposed to start again. Okay, so we're going to read the lecture from President Daisaku Ikeda on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. It starts on page 153 as far as the text that will be covered. We already read the 20 some odd page Gosho in the last 2 weeks prior to now. I hope you all remember what that Gosho is about, right? So we can go into this without reading the gray box, because we're going to reread it again anyhow as we go into each component section. This is again from part 9 and 10 of that writing. As I explained to you, it's the 10 questions, 9 answers Gosho. All right, so are you ready? So we're going to skip over to 155. All right, it starts here saying, people are seeking a philosophy that will, may I have a tissue? Thank you. That's it. That's cool. Get it. Go ahead and get it started here. You want to fold it up for me? Thanks. Lecture. People are seeking a philosophy that will lead to genuine happiness. They are earnestly searching from the depths of their beings for a new movement dedicated to helping everyone reveal their inherent dignity and, through the power of dialogue, to expanding a network of good and creating a world of harmony and peaceful coexistence. Upholding the banner of Nichiren Daishonen's ideal of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, the Soka Gakkai will steadfastly continue to pursue the mission of realizing social change for the sake of people's happiness and world peace. This is the essence of religion and exists to serve human beings. And this is the essence of a religion that exists to serve human beings and the fundamental spirit of Buddhism. It proves that our efforts accord exactly with the spirit of Nichiren Daishonin. It is also the very heart of the shared struggle of mentor and disciple in the Soka Gakkai. Continuing on page 156. The original aim of Buddhism is not to be satisfied simply with the attainment of one's own enlightenment. This is a very profound statement. Why? Huh? We're here for Kosen Rufu, right? I mean, the bottom line is that this concept of widespread propagation had never been embraced by any of the other schools. Do you understand that? As Buddhism was understood prior to the teachings of the Daishonin, any Flower Garland Sutra, Metta Sutra, Medicine King Master Sutra, you could be a member of a school that, as long as it was from Shakyamuni, one of Shakyamuni's teachings, they were all equal. They were all the varying different ways that the varying different people would eventually be able to attain Buddhahood. But now we're in the latter day of the law when Shakyamuni's teachings no longer have any power. Right. Okay? So he's saying the original aim of Buddhism is not to be satisfied simply with the attainment of one's own enlightenment, because what was Shakyamuni's original intent? What was his inspiration in spreading this understanding of the law that he'd come to through his own meditative processes? What? Free of suffering. Not only free of suffering, to make everyone equal to himself. Okay, so to make everyone a Buddha. Okay, this all happened after the Bodhi tree, right? Okay, so true enlightenment impels one to take action for the happiness of all people. Why? According to because we're talking about the Buddhism of the sun now. We're talking about the Buddhism of sowing. We're not talking about the Buddhism of harvest. So this has nothing to do with Shakyamuni or anything Shakyamuni said. Shakyamuni didn't preach a teaching that allowed people to attain Buddhahood in their present form. Okay, he only suggested that it might be possible. It was only later people like Tentai qualified that through. Again, this all boils down to, we can talk about what Shakyamuni said, and we don't know. We don't even know if a real Shakyamuni actually existed. To be very candid with you, if you look into academic research, oh sure, just like there are questions about the existence of Christ, there are questions about the existence of Krishna. You're talking about whenever you go back more than 1,500 years backwards, you get into situations where the timelines get a little flaky and the telling of the stories get a little less conspicuously discernible or investigatable, confirmable. Okay? Because again, when Shakyamuni died and the first council occurred, how did they record what he had read, what he had said? How did they come up with the first sutras after Shakyamuni's death? They all agreed what he said, and then they memorized them. Okay, so it was all word of mouth. It wasn't written down for another 100 years. Okay, and then on and on and on and on. So when we talk about the Lotus Sutra, we're really talking about those scrolls that they found in Dunhuang. Okay, those same kinds of scrolls, I should say, because they existed throughout that entire period. People were discovering the Shakyamuni's teaching as it spread from India around through the Caucasus and back into China. It didn't go over the Himalaya mountains. It then got combined with some tantric Buddhism that was being practiced in Tibet. And that's how Tibetan Buddhism got introduced and so forth. And so again, what we're reading when we read the Lotus Sutra right now, as I'm going to read it when we start, is a translation of an understanding that was conveyed as a translation, one of at least three. Okay? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's really, we can only trace back what we're referring to, as Shakyamuni said. We can only go really back as far as Kumarajiva to know that who recorded it as being such. All right? So, he's saying, continuing on page 156, encouraging a group of new practitioners to spread the law, Shakyamuni called on them to travel widely for the happiness and peace of many people out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, happiness, and peace of peace of heavenly and human beings. That's essentially what we're doing, pursuing Kosen Rufu. Shakyamuni's greatest purpose in spreading the law was to warmly support and take action for those who were suffering, working with them to establish happy, secure lives and to build a peaceful world. Continuing on page 156. Middle of first column. The sun of the mystic law, illuminating the darkness of the latter day of the law. From its inception, therefore, Buddhism was a religion focused on the needs of human beings, aiming for the happiness of all people. These words from the Lotus Sutra also convey this, so that one might bring tranquility to and comfort and benefit heavenly and human beings in large human beings in large measure. This desire to benefit others is the fundamental vow and wish of not only Shakyamuni Buddha, but of all Buddhas of the 10 directions and 3 existences. Spreading the teaching, in other words, the Lotus Sutra, which actualizes this wish, is the ultimate reason or purpose for which Buddhas make their appearance in this world. They only appear in order to make everyone equal to themselves. Okay? That's the point. After second column, page 156. After Shakyamuni's passing in the latter day of the law, an age of suffering and confusion, Nichiren Daishonin courageously rose to action, to carry on the same vow. As the votary of the Lotus Sutra, he devoted himself to widely spreading the mystic law, to realizing Kosen Rufu, in order to lead all people to enlightenment, to make them all equal to himself. If one wishes to secure happiness and peace for all people, one cannot help turning one's attention to social change. Now, this is all very poignant to the environment that we live in right now. Transforming this troubled Sahe world in which we live into the land of tranquil light, a Buddha land, is the true essence of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. The Soka Gakkai is the organization that is faithfully carrying on the Daishonin's great struggle and spirit of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. By what? By propagating the Buddhism of sowing, which qualifies that, according to the teachings as they were understood by Tiantai, Nagarjuna, Myolo, Dingyo, we already have the ability, we already have the Buddha nature. Okay? So the whole idea of establishing a correct teaching for the peace of the land is identical to the establishment of Kosen Rufu. Okay? That actually what the establishment of Kosen Rufu is the pacification of the land through the propagation of the correct teaching of the law. Okay? So he says, in April, the month in which the Daishonin first proclaimed in his teaching in 1253, and with May 3rd, Soka Gakkai Day, right before us, let us take a fresh look at the Daishonin's treatise on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, learning from his spirit to help all people overcome suffering and become happy, and reaffirming the philosophy of Soka humanism. And how do we do that again? We do Shakabuku, and we introduce people to the practice by which they themselves attain or reveal their own Buddha nature. First to themselves, then to everybody else. That's the whole idea. Okay? So, continuing at the top of page 157. Everybody's with me? So that's what we're supposed to be trying to do right now. You're supposed to be revealing, living your life as a Buddha, exactly as you are. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be in the 9 worlds. You'll be in them most of the time. But the purpose of your life is what? To show your Buddhahood to other people so that they can perceive their own. This is the most important thing, even if you only do it to a single individual. Okay? Even if you only do it to convince yourself. Okay? This is something that carries on from this lifetime to the next lifetime. That's the important link that you establish in this life through those actions. So, going back, and now we're going to start reading the section of the Gosho that is contained within this lecture for this lecture today. Page 157. The host said, emperors and kings have their foundation in the state and bring peace and order to the age. Ministers and commoners hold possession of their fields and gardens and supply the needs of the world. But if marauders come from other regions to invade the nation, or if revolt breaks out within the domain and people's lands are seized and plundered, how can there be anything but terror and confusion? If the nation is destroyed, the people's homes are wiped out, then where can they flee for safety? If you care anything about your personal security, you should first of all pray for order and tranquility throughout the 4 quarters of the land. Should you not? What is that saying? Regardless of our political beliefs, we should never be doing anything but supporting a peaceful reality to the degree that it can exist within the society that we live in. We can never allow our personal opinions to be stronger or more important to us than our mission for Kosen Rufu, or the wisdom of the fact that all people possess the Buddha nature. We talk about politics, it's hard to remember that all the time. Or when we talk about other cultures, we talk about other people, other religions. It's the same thing. He's going to make a couple clarifications about that now. All right? But once again, if we don't pray for the safety of where we live, we subject ourselves to the potentiality of being affected by that becoming an insecure place instead of a secure place. A place where it's difficult to derive happiness, food, shelter, and so forth. Okay, safety. All right. Says the great earthquake of the Shoka era, which struck the Kamakura area in August 1257, directly spurred the Daishonin to write on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Even before this devastating earthquake, the country had experienced a series of natural disasters, including destructive winds and floods, in addition to severe famine and epidemics, with no end in sight to the people suffering. Witnessing their terrible plight, the Daishonin says, filled him with deep pain and frustration, having no one with whom he could share his sorrow and grief. He writes, I have been brooding alone upon this matter, indignant in my heart, as he wrote in this lecture, or in this treatise. The Daishonin looked unflinchingly at why was he so alone in his perspective of things? He says here, I have been brooding alone upon this matter, indignant in my heart. What's he saying? That's a very profound comment from Nichiren Daishonin that he places in this treatise for a reason, because it qualifies something. He's the only one that's thinking of it this way, because he's originating the Buddhism of sowing. He's not looking back on those teachings that don't qualify this very important matter. Okay? Do you understand? So he's saying, I have been brooding alone upon this matter, indignant in my heart. What's that saying? Why does he say that?
He's the founder of
what?
He's the founder of Nam-myoho.
Huh? Okay.
He's the thus come one. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a thus come one. I have been brooding alone as the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the latter day of the law. Nobody else knows that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the correct teaching that will save everybody that participates. And I got to put up with all these incorrect teachings that have preceded, that have stolen the correct vision and understanding, the correct heart of the people. And now the environment is reflecting that incorrect heart. And people are suffering without knowing why, when it's within their own power to stop it. That's what he's saying. I have been brooding alone upon this matter, indignant in my heart, that there's so little I can do to stop it, because of the people in power are the ones that are twisting it. The shogunate are all ninbutsu, right? Okay. The Daishonin looked unflinchingly at the condition of society. What's he mean, unflinchingly? Very strictly, very, not cutting any corners, any slacks. Very clearly, with clear mind, he's perceiving the condition of society as being a reflection of these practices, the practices of the incorrect teachings. That's what he's qualifying in this Gosho, right? Okay. Or in this treatise, I shouldn't say this isn't really a letter to somebody. This is really, well, it is a letter to, but it's an official remonstration. He was driven by an earnest wish to free people from suffering and a fierce determination to clarify and put an end to the one evil. What's the one evil? Yeah, we know he was referring to Honen, but what is the one evil? It's the incorrect teachings that invalidate the Lotus Sutra as being the supreme teaching that is to be, respected as such, because it's only there that the hidden teaching of the Great Pure Law can come forth, in the latter day. It says, okay, he was driven by an earnest wish to free people from suffering and a fierce determination to clarify and put an end to the one evil at the root of people's misery, incorrect understanding of the correct teaching. This led him to search through Buddhist scriptures to find the cause of and a remedy for the suffering he witnessed, which would be to figure out what is the correct teaching then. How is it that the teachings that we're practicing are leading us in this way? Don't forget, Seichoji was a Ninbutsu temple by the time he went to it. Okay, so he himself has chanted Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, as a younger part of his religious life. Okay, he says the conclusion he reached after he checked all. Okay, that's not there for Ninbutsu isn't getting me anywhere. What's it say in the Flower Garland Sutra? What's it say in the Medicine King and the Medicine Master Sutra? What's it say in, okay? That's how he's, so the conclusion he reached was that the fundamental cause, by studying all those sutras, is where he derived this understanding, okay? The fundamental cause of the country's turmoil was slander of the law, was denying the validity of the correct teaching and instead embracing the incorrect teaching. Okay, that were no longer viable because they were it's no longer the former or the middle day. Everybody's with me? Okay. The conclusion he reached was that the fundamental cause of the country's turmoil was slander of the law, the rejection of the Lotus Sutra, which teaches respect for life and all human beings. He became profoundly convinced that the only ultimate solution was to firmly establish in the heart of each person the correct Buddhist teaching that could serve as the pillar underpinning society. Okay? That's the wisdom of any Buddha. Okay? The correct way to fix this. By expressing this truth on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, he sought to admonish and awaken the leaders of his society. That is why this work is referred to as a treatise of remonstration with the government authorities. Bottom of page 57, second column, working for tranquility throughout the four quarters of the land. In this chapter, I will focus on parts 9 and 10, or the closing portion of the treatise. In these parts, the guest finally accepts the idea of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land presented by the host, and voices his intention to discard erroneous teachings that slander the Lotus Sutra and earnestly seek the correct teaching of Buddhism. Top of page 158, first column. In response, the Daishonin, as the host, stresses 2 points, stating, in effect, that war must be prevented at all costs and that action must be taken quickly before it is too late. Say that one again, since we live where we live. In response, the Daishonin, as the host, stresses 2 points, stating, in effect, that war must be prevented at all costs and that action must be taken quickly before it is too late. Just before the above passage, the Daishonin, referring to the Medicine Master Sutra, Golden Light Sutra, Great Collection Sutra, and Benevolent King's Sutra, points out that there are 2 calamities outlined in these sutras that have not yet occurred. These are the calamity of revolt within one's own domain, internal strife, and the calamity of invasion from foreign lands, foreign invasion. These both constitute the disaster of warfare, one arising within the country and the other from without. Okay? And now, what does he also say, though, back on page 19, when we're back in the section before we get to 9 and 10, about practitioners of the correct teaching, protectors of the law? What does he say about them? He says that they don't have to abide by the normal standards of proper behavior. Do you remember that part? It's on page 19. In other words, if your country, your domain is attacked, it's okay for you to defend it physically. Okay? It's okay to be Shijo Kingo, a samurai, and have a duty to defend. That is not saying lay down under any, war must be avoided at all costs. He's not qualifying that one of the at all costs should be complete capitulation, because we can never capitulate to a lack of the freedom that allows us to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? So you can never capitulate the freedom that you have in your country to practice the correct teaching. It's do not begrudge your lifetime at that point. Okay? He's not going to make that point here, but it's very clear in everything else we've read, is not? Do you understand where I'm coming from? That's why that Gosho, or that treatise, is my favorite, because it says that I don't have to abide by other people's opinion of right and wrong, so long as I'm abiding by the sutra's direction for my behavior. Is everybody with me? Mm-hmm. Do you disagree with me, anyone? Is that not what we read? Is that not what it said? Okay, so going again. These both constitute the disaster of warfare, one arising within the country and the other from without. Nothing is more barbarous than war. We must on no account let war happen. That means that we pray for the safety of the sovereignty that we live in. Wherever we are, whatever it is, we need to be most loyal to it if it's providing us the protection to practice the correct teaching. Do you understand? Or if it's a place where we can preach the correct teaching and teach it to others. Okay? Nothing is more barbarous than war. We must on no account let war happen. There is a fervent message contained in, this is the fervent message contained in the Daishonen's remonstration of this treatise. The Daishonin then declares, if you care anything about your personal safety, you should first pray for order and tranquility throughout the four quarters of the land, should you not? He is saying, in other words, that if we are concerned about our own safety and security, we should first pray for the peace and security of the society in which we live, because if it's not peaceful and secure, we are in fact not either. Okay? Continuing at the bottom of page 158. These are not only words of censure for the nation's rulers in the Daishonen's time, but a guideline for peace for those of us today who live in a democratic society, who live in a democratic society. He makes that distinction. Why? Almost all democracies provide for freedom of religion. Okay? There are some that favor other sects or other belief sets more strongly and allow a minority to get away with continuing with their own thinking. But generally speaking, you would say autocrats are where you lose control of religion, because the religion is an outside influence that can overcome the authority of any autocrat. Okay? So continuing on the top of page 158. Essentially, is everybody with me? Okay. Essentially, our personal security is not something that that can be established in isolation. Okay? For each of us to enjoy a safe and secure life, it is critical that both the natural environment and the society in which we live are flourishing in peace and stability. So what does he qualify there? The oneness of persons and the environment, right? Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's not enough that we not just have boom, boom, shoot at each other war. We got to also not have typhoons and earthquakes and all the other things that go along with a lack of peace and stability. And he says that's all a reflection of us. That's all a reflection. That's all within our power to change or to maintain and sustain. He says that's how a Buddha land is created. That's what Kosen Rufu is. Okay? He says, therefore, if we truly seek personal security, we must first transcend our lesser selves ruled by egoism. And what is that really talking about? Living in the 9 worlds. We really only think about ourselves for the most part. Yeah. Okay? All right. And work to establish the peace and security of the society in which we live. All of the people we don't like as well as the people that we agree and like. Yeah. Okay? That's society. All right? He says, in which we live. In other words, tranquility throughout the 4 quarters of the land, because Kosen Rufu isn't just the right of the bodhisattvas of the earth. The people that practice the correct teaching at the time of Kosen Rufu is only 1/3 of the population. 1/3 of the people don't give a shit. The other third are opposed, but they still get that benefit. That's how powerful it is. Okay? Tranquility throughout the four quarters of the land. So that will include people that we don't like or know. This is the Daishonen's message. The Daishonen's use of the expression tranquility throughout the four quarters of the land also demonstrates that he was concerned with more than just the security of a single country. He was seeking peace for the entire world. All right? And we can, as long as those of us that have the ability to practice. A teaching for building, because despotism always dies. It always fails. There are no historically significant autocracies, because they always have to be inherited by somebody upon death, and that other person isn't going to have the same personality allowed the person that was in power to hold sway. That's why they always crumble. Kingdoms, all of that kind of stuff. All right? Yes. The thing that holds countries together longer is belief sets than personalities. All right? Ideals. A teaching for building happiness in the real world, because that's what this is. This isn't just a treatise of theoretical construct. All right? A teaching for building happiness in the real world. Buddhism is a philosophy that affirms the preciousness of life. The Daishonin writes, life is the most precious of all treasures. One day of life is more valuable than all the treasures of the major world system. And you have no idea, when I've been in my darkest times, how that kept me from killing myself. This admonition from the Daishonin qualifying a single day of life. How could you be such a moron to even think that you're so sad or so overwhelmed with, wow. Okay, I really owe a lot to that one line. One day of life is more valuable than all the treasures of the major world system. And life is the foremost of all treasures. So we should always treasure our lives, but what does that also mean? We must treasure the lives of all others. They are also equal treasures to our own. That's the whole importance of us perceiving the treasure of our own life, is that's the only way we really can perceive the treasure in others, or it's all theoretical. We don't see what we don't have. Okay? We must build a society guided first and foremost by the principle of respect and dignity of life. That's page 158. Continuing on page 159. The Lotus Sutra, first column, the Lotus Sutra sees the Buddha nature worthy of infinite respect existing within each person's life. Based on this standard, any other system of thought that teaches the dignity of life deserves our respect as well. On the other hand, we can never accept, this is Daisaku Ikeda giving you guidance, guys. On the other hand, we can never accept a philosophy that denies the dignity of life. So if there's a ruling concern that does not respect life, you don't go along with that. You don't accept that. Do you understand? So that just talked about all the despots that I was just referring to. They are absolutely and must be resisted for the evil contained within their stifling of the correct teaching. And that's why they'll lose. That's why they can be defeated 100% of the time. Right. They represent fundamental darkness. Okay? Let me start at the top. And we know who. I don't have to mention them. And there's only a handful. All right, so going back to the top of page 59, because what President K is going to say is, we don't have to, oppose everything. No. Just the things that negate the fundamental reality that life is precious and that it is worthwhile and it's not to be just taken away lightly. Let me start from top of page 159. This is all really like woohoo stuff here. All right, top of page 159. The Lotus Sutra sees the Buddha nature, which everything possesses, even the plants and the environment, the animals, worthy of infinite respect, existing within each person's life. Based on this standard, any other system of thought that teaches the dignity of life deserves our respect as well. On the other hand, we can never accept a philosophy that denies the dignity of life. This is the true spirit of tolerance and compassion. Why? How can you say in one sentence, we can never accept, and then the next sentence you say the true spirit of tolerance and compassion?
How do you do that?
No, actually,
Never
again,
accept
if
it.
you ever accept, if you don't call out the evil,
All right.
the mistake, again, remember what Chang'an said, to call out the mistakes of another is to be their parent,
Yeah.
okay? In the absence of, and that if you don't call out their mistakes, you are in fact their enemy,
Yeah.
and you are no disciple of the Buddha. Woo-hoo!
So how do you do?
Okay, then you must always. This is called shakabuku. That's called, removing error and replacing it with clarity. That's why there's a more formal explanation or definition. I'll give it to you later. It says, on the other hand, we can never accept a philosophy that denies the dignity of life. This is the true spirit of tolerance and compassion as it is taught in Buddhism, which is to correct people making the fundamental errors that will lead them to the hell of incessant suffering. You don't just let them do that without saying something.
Right.
All right? The Daishonin doesn't remonstrate. I mean, that's in like almost every Gosho I've read for 12 years. So, I mean, we should all be pretty clear on that. The Daishonin doesn't remonstrate with the country's rulers to demand that they abandon all teachings except the Lotus Sutra. He is insisting that they abandon intolerant, exclusionary doctrines that call on people to discard the Lotus Sutra, which teaches the supreme dignity and worth of life. Moreover, he sought through dialogue the format in which he wrote this remonstration to persuade them to choose correct values in order to bring about a true solution to the troubles facing the country, specifically urging them to refrain from giving alms to priests who slander the law. In other words, it's calling out the truth and then having the wisdom to be able to substantiate that truth through what you say. All right? The one evil, on page 159, first column, the one evil that the Daishonin focus on in this treatise, because there are several. He's got one on every other major sect you can think of. The one evil that the Daishonin focus on in this treatise is the Nimbutsu teaching. You know how many he's got on true word and how many he's got on everything. The one evil that the Daishonin focuses on in this treatise is the Nimbutsu teaching spread by the priest Honen, which sought to turn people away from faith in the Lotus Sutra. Honen specifically called on his followers to discard, close, ignore, and abandon the Lotus Sutra. Because don't forget, there was this big call. What's the highest sutra? Is it the Lotus Sutra? Is it the Flower Garland Sutra? And every school would have a different way that they perceived that pecking order. Okay? In actuality, the Nimbutsu teachings, very widespread at the time, urged its followers to give up making any effort for happiness in this life and instead to seek escape from this world of suffering by imploring an all-powerful transcendent being, Amida, same as God or whatever, to grant them rebirth in a tranquil pure land after their death. Might as well be heaven or whatever. This is in exact opposition to the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, which urges us to reveal in this life the supremely noble life state within us, purify the real world in which we live, and there build a realm of peace and happiness. The Lotus Sutra teaches that human beings play the determining role in their own lives in this latter day of the law, which is rife with suffering and filled with the 5 impurities. And we're all people of the 5 impurities. So It doesn't hold us back from attaining Buddhahood in our present form. True wisdom based on the holistic view of life. It should perhaps be argued that the Nimbutsu teaching is also one of Shakyamuni's teachings, and it was easily accessible for those oppressed by suffering, offering them a temporary feeling of respite and refuge. Because what was it? What was Nimbutsu teaching them? If you devote your life now to Amida, you don't worry about any of this. It's too hard to do in this lifetime. Just go to heaven and you'll understand everything. Okay? All right. So he says, it could be argued that the Nimbutsu teaching is also one of Shakyamuni's teachings, and it was easily accessible to those oppressed by suffering, offering them a temporary feeling of respite and refuge. Just get through this life. Whenever you die, it's okay. You're going to go to the you're going to go to the West. It is possible that the Buddha presented people with such a teaching in response to a particular set of circumstances. It's possible, but we don't know. Okay? But it remains a partial view offered to suit those with a specific capacity, and as such is a teacher of minor good. The Daishonin regarded the teaching of rebirth in the Pure Land of perfect bliss after death as an expedient means to provide short-term comfort, describing it as temporary words of solace preached prior to the Lotus Sutra. Sort of like telling people about heaven and so forth. No. He insisted that it was not the truth. In contrast, the Lotus Sutra, based on a complete or holistic view of life, and don't forget, that's how Tentai broke all this stuff down. Okay? So that's where you get in the separation of the agamas versus the flower garland versus the wisdom versus the correct and equal versus the perfect. Okay? Perfect is the Lotus Sutra and the Nirvana, right? So he's saying later, those are later teachings, right? That's the next to the last and the last teaching. So he's saying, describing it as temporary words of solace preached prior to the Lotus Sutra. Okay? That's why it's called provisional Mahayana. Okay? Not true Mahayana. He insisted that this was not the truth. That Daishonin is the first one to come up with this great pure law that's already been prophesied but not revealed. On page 159, in contrast, the Lotus Sutra, based on a complete or holistic view of life, teaches the fundamental great good. Now, what's which is the underlying essence of all things? What is he talking about? In contrast, the Lotus Sutra, based on a complete or holistic view of life, teaches the fundamental great good, which is the underlying essence of all things. What does the Lotus Sutra teach? The law, without identifying what it is. And numberless major world system dust particle culpus. Okay? The fact that we're not here for the first time. We didn't just come about for the first time in terms of our Buddha nature either. All right? So he says, in contrast, the Lotus Sutra, based on a complete or holistic view of life, teaches the fundamental great good, which is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, by the way, which is the underlying essence of all things. That's why it's Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is what that's talking about. Put another way, it offers a practical and realistic means by which all people, whatever their situation or circumstance, can attain Buddhahood. Now, is that true, as it's stated there? President Ikeda, again, says a lot of stuff that you got to really understand what he's saying and how he can really say that, or else it's not in accord with what we're learning here. He says, put another way, all right? It offers a practical and realistic means by which all people, whatever their situation or circumstance, can attain Buddhahood. Is that true, other than the Buddhism of sowing? No, It's the latter day of the law. The Lotus Sutra is a provisional Mahayana teaching. We don't study the Lotus Sutra to figure out what it says and to divine the truth out of the Lotus Sutra. We chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to the object of devotion. That's it in the latter day. Okay? We borrow and refute the theoretical teaching, and we borrow and use in Gongyo, right? That's the whole point. We're not praising the Lotus Sutra. I need to make that. It says, by contrast, the Lotus Sutra, he says here in this paragraph, he says, put another way, he could say, the Lotus Sutra is leading people to that. It is not. That's why I'm going to read it again. You get that out of the Lotus Sutra. Tentai got that out of the Lotus Sutra. Good. Let's start there. Okay, after Nagarjuna did and Tuantu and Nanye, okay, this was a whole very long process of a whole, from Kumarajiva all the way to Nichiren. It got distilled and distilled and distilled and distilled and distilled until it was time to hatch.
Yeah.
Okay, so it offers a practical and realistic means by which all people, whatever their situation or circumstance, can attain Buddhahood, so long as they practice the Buddhism of sowing and perceive the Lotus Sutra as the correct teaching based on the Lotus Sutra, based on the Buddhism of sowing. Top of page 160. As long as minor good does not run counter to great good, so long as minor good does not run counter to great good. So this minor good of Nimbutsu runs counter to the great good of the Lotus Sutra when it is utilized as a text for telling people to abandon, disregard, whatever, and ignore and abandon, okay, the Lotus Sutra. He says, as long as a minor good does not run counter to a great good, it still functions as good. But if the partial views obscure our ability to perceive the complete view, the whole truth, and runs counter to the fundamental great good, it is no longer good in any kind and becomes instead a great evil that opposes great good. For instance, if people said, I don't need to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo because I'm like the Lotus Sutra. This is the latter day of the law. The Lotus Sutra is no longer the correct teaching. The correct teaching, the essential teaching, is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It is not the 28 chapters that Kumarajiva translated and that Tentai broke down. Okay? And that the Daishonin says he found in the depths of the 16th chapter, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, the great pure law that had been prophesied to make its advent in the 5th 500-year period. He says, okay, so that's why he's qualifying why Nimbutsu as a teaching of Shakyamuni has to be opposed on this circumstance, because it's being propagated by Honen, who's qualifying that everybody should get rid of the Lotus Sutra as part of their devotion to the Amida Sutras. Do you follow? That's where it's crossing over the line and disqualifying itself. Also not paying attention to the age. We're now in the 5th 500-year period. That was then, this was now. He says, let me just say that last sentence again. But if the partial view obscures our ability to perceive the complete view, the whole truth, and runs counter to the fundamental great good, it is no longer good of any kind. It becomes instead a great evil that opposes the great good. Honen's teaching, that's why the Daishonin was talking about Shakabuku all the time. No matter what school he was talking about. Honen's teaching of the exclusive practice of the Nimbutsu emphasized above all the limitations of people's abilities and capacities. The limitations of people's abilities and capacities. And in doing so, rejected the Lotus Sutra, deeming it to be too difficult for people of the latter day of the law to practice. They didn't have the capacity to become Buddhas in their present form. He was teaching them. Okay? Which is that's a slander. That's a major slander. That's to deny Buddhahood. That's a major slander. And on a step, once you know what the Nirvana and Lotus say, the Lotus and Nirvana Sutras say, okay? And on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, the Daishonin reveals the essence of this evil to the nation's leaders and then indicates the true and correct path of life set forth in Buddhism. The fundamental solution to the problem is to base oneself on wisdom. Okay, so here's President Keita's lecture. The fundamental solution to the problem is to base oneself on wisdom grounded in a holistic view of life. What is a holistic view of life? One that includes everything within it. It doesn't exclude anything. It's a rhyme and reason how everything fits. Okay, everything is a complement to one another. Everything is a causal reflection of one another. That's a holistic view. Everything is natural. Everything is complete and final. Do you understand? All right, so the fundamental solution to the middle of page 160, first column, the fundamental solution to the problem is to base oneself on wisdom grounded in a holistic view of life, establish a correct system of values, bring an end to an age of confusion, and actualize a society in which all can live in peace and happiness and peace. If we accomplish Kosen Rufu, does everyone live in happiness and peace? Yes! Everyone. That's the point. Okay? Establishing the life-affirming principles of Nichiren Buddhism and making constructive efforts to positively transform this troubled Sahe world into the land of eternally tranquil light constitute the great path of leading to establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, or genuine peace. Let me see here. We've been going an hour. I'm going to go ahead and stop here, because I don't want to just finish this, just squeeze all this into an hour and a half. Do you mind?
No, we finish it next week.
We finish we start with the transformation of our hearts changes the world.
We'll go to US next week.
Okay, can we make it the week following? Huh? And then we're already into Chinese New Year then, you're saying, or something.
Yeah,
what?
then it's yes.
Okay.
On the 9th, it's Chinese 9th.
Okay. So do you want to continue right now and finish this and not have another meeting next week? That's fine with me, because I can get through it.
Let's go for it. Yeah. Let's go.
Huh?
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's finish it. Okay, so the transformation of our hearts changes the world. The transformation of our hearts changes the world at the top of 160, first column. When we examine this wide variety of sutras, we find that they all stress, this is from the Gosho, we find that they all stress how grave a matter it is to slander the correct teaching. How pitiful that people should go all out of the gate of the correct teaching and enter so deep into the prison of these distorted doctrines. How stupid that they should fall one after another into the snares of these evil doctrines and remain for so long entangled in this net of slanderous teachings. They choose their way in these mists and miasmas and sink down amid the raging flames of hell. How could one not grieve? How could one not suffer? Pardon me. Therefore, you must quickly reform the tenets that you hold in your heart and embrace the one true vehicle, the single good doctrine of the Lotus Sutra. He continues, therefore, you must quickly reform the tenets that you hold in your heart and embrace the one true vehicle, the single good doctrine of the Lotus Sutra, which he's referring to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, but he doesn't say Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. If you do so, then the threefold world will become the Buddha land, will achieve Kosen Rufu, is what he's saying. And how could a Buddha land ever decline? Kosen Rufu will last forever. The regions of the 10 directions will all become treasure realms. And how could a treasure realm ever suffer harm? If you live in a country that knows no decline or diminution, in a land that suffers no harm or disruption, then your body will find peace and security, and your mind will be calm and untroubled. You must believe my words, heed what I say. Continuing at the bottom of the second column, page 160. The Daishonen's effort to establish the correct teaching for the peace of the land was a struggle against fundamental evil that rejects fundamental good. That is, rejects the attainment of enlightenment by all people. In this section, speaking as the host, he sternly admonishes the guest to prevent him from falling prey to evil doctrines that entangle people in slander of the law. First column, page 161. Using such expressions as the prison of those distorted doctrines and the snares of these evil doctrines and this net of slanderous teachings. He employs the metaphors to stress how difficult it is to free oneself from slander of the law. Now, did you understand what that was saying? He's saying there's a reason why the Daishonin is using this specific descriptive language to call it nets or snares or prisons, okay? Because slander of the law is something, again, why are there 52 stages in Tentai's process of great concentration and insight, okay? He's got 10 stages, 10 stages, 10 stages, 10 stages, 10. First of them are 50 stages, right? What's the 51st stage? Can't go backwards. Can't go backwards. Okay? So what the Daishonin is qualifying here is that once you slander the law, you have to create good causes to escape the karma of slandering the law. It isn't simply just deciding, oh, okay. You have to take with it everything that occurs to you because it's all a reflection of your past karmic actions. Do you follow? Okay. So he's saying, again, in this section, speaking as the host, he sternly admonishes the guest to prevent him from falling prey to evil doctrines that entangle people in slander of the law, using such expressions as prison, the prison of those distorted doctrines, the snares of these evil doctrines, and this net of slanderous teachings. He employs the metaphors to stress how difficult it is to free oneself from slander of the law. What is to free oneself of slander of the law? It's to attain enlightenment. Okay? Because you haven't freed yourself until you hit 51st stage. Okay? If you chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo the last moment of your life, even if you stayed like Chunda or somebody, okay, even if you had no intellect, you're going to remanifest and attain Buddhahood in your present form in your next lifetime. Okay? So that's the 51st, 52nd stage. If we have maintained sustained faith through the last moment of our life, we have attained Buddhahood because we will manifest as a Buddha in our next lifetime. Period. Okay? So that's the only way to free oneself. Okay? You're with me. The expression lose their way in these myths and miasmas likens confusion to this lifetime regarding the correct teaching of Buddhism to be enveloped in a thick mist and haze. Why? Because there's all kinds of people say that they know what's going on and they got the correct teaching. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. Okay? That can be very difficult to discern correctly if you haven't done what? Study. Right. You have to apply yourself to bring forth your Buddhahood. It doesn't just like come as like a ka-ching. You pull the lever long enough until the slot machine came up all jackpot. Okay? It's you transforming, doing human revolution, you transforming from a common mortal into a Buddha. Right? Okay, revealing your true identity, casting off the transient to reveal the true, right? Okay, so the Daishonin teaches the way by which people can free themselves from the chains of misfortune and bring peace and security to society. It requires a transformation of the tenets we hold in our heart, the lesser self to the greater self. My gig, my family, my wealth, my, to peace in society that reaches throughout the four quarters of the realm. Get it? Like Buddhists think.
Yes.
All right? He says a fundamental revolution of our innermost state of mind, because that is a transformation of, that is the transformation. When you start thinking all the time about every Kosen Rufu, you've attained enlightenment. You know, pat yourself on the back. Don't go backwards. You can't go all the way backwards. But all right, that's the correct thinking.
Yes.
All right, what we have faith in indicates what we hold most precious, what values we cherish. It establishes our fundamental purpose and direction in life. Are we living our lives to become Buddhas in our present form and to fulfill our missions for Kosen Rufu, or to get as many goodies as we can because we found a great way to do it? You know, just overcome my problem and have happiness. Overcome my problem and get rich. Go overcome my problem. Okay, it's using something outside of yourself versus discovering what's really actually always been inside yourself. Okay, all right. So what we have faith in indicates what we hold most cherished, what values we cherish. It establishes our fundamental purpose and direction in life. In other words, we are driven by In other words, are we driven by egoism that seeks personal happiness at the exclusion and expense of others, or by comparison or by compassion that is concerned with both our own and others' welfare, refusing to build our happiness on the misfortunes of others? The focus is on the transformation of our minds. The focus is on the transformation of our minds, our hearts, which are the same thing, our values, which ultimately reflect, all is the same thing. It is the human revolution in a single individual. That's what becoming a Buddha in your present form is actualized. Without that, establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land cannot be achieved, because it's just theoretical. It doesn't lead to Buddhahood. If it doesn't lead to Buddhahood, it doesn't lead to it's only theoretical. Okay? That's why we reveal actual Ichinen Sanzen. Tentai might have theorized Ichinen Sanzen. People can say Ichinen Sanzen. We specifically practice actual Ichinen Sanzen. There is a difference. When we transform our hearts and minds, what tenet or ideal should we base them on? According to the Daishonin, it is the one true vehicle, the single good doctrine. The single good doctrine here is the ultimate good taught in the Lotus Sutra, the principle that all people can bring forth their inherent Buddha nature and attain enlightenment. That is not brought forth in the Lotus Sutra. Not opposing what President Ikeda is saying, I'm just qualifying the truth. Okay? You won't find that if you read the Lotus Sutra in the Lotus Sutra. All right? It's an extrapolation of the truth that's stated in the Lotus Sutra. It only comes about by chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. All right? In his copy of the Daishonin's writings, first Soka Gakkai president Tanesaburo Makaguchi heavily underlined the words, embrace the one true vehicle, the single good doctrine of the Lotus Sutra. If he did that from the writings of the Daishonin, he did it from his copy of the Risho and Kokuran. He wasn't writing it, underlining it from the Lotus Sutra. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's actually from the Gosho. All right? In his copy of the Daishonin's writings, first Soka Gakkai president Tanesaburo Makaguchi heavily underlined the words, embrace the one true vehicle, the single good doctrine of the Lotus Sutra. Dedicating one's life to the single good doctrine of the Lotus Sutra is the sure way to transform the karma of all humankind. And it is. The one true doctrine of the Lotus Sutra is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The ultimate aim of establishing the correct teaching, page 161. I would now like to reconfirm the principle of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Establishing the correct teaching, first of all, depends on the transformation of the heart and mind, an inner transformation at the individual level. So he's talking about Kosen Rufu only starts with you. It only starts with you becoming the Buddha.
Yes.
Period. Stop there.
Right.
Okay, if you didn't start there, that's where you have to start. Because if you didn't start there, you're not going to perceive the truth in the first place. Okay? It requires awakening to the fundamental good within us, establishing in our hearts the principles of respect for human dignity and life that are taught in the Lotus Sutra and making them the core of our life philosophy. We respect living beings. Only through the actions of such awakened individuals can the teachings of the Lotus Sutra be established as the underlying and guiding principles of society. Page 162, first full paragraph. And since the essence of establishing the correct teaching is to build a spiritual foundation for peace in society, it is only natural that we should join forces with like-minded individuals and organizations and work together to protect the dignity of life and realize world peace. Our cause is not exclusionary. And Daisaku Ikeda just wrote a paragraph encouraging us to focus on SGIP. Okay? That's exactly what that's talking about. All right? That's Soka Gakkai, internet practitioners, people practicing just as we do, okay? Being included in the Soka Gakkai. Let me read what the guy just said. He said, and since the essence of establishing the correct teaching is to build a spiritual foundation for peace in society, it is only natural that we should all join forces. All of us that believe in President Ikeda as a mentor, believe in that Daishonin as the original teacher, that believe in Kosen Rufu as being a potential and a reality, okay? That believe that the correct teaching of the Lotus Sutra is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, that believe Nichiren Daishonin is the original teacher. You're not going to get there on Nichiren Shu. This isn't just about chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand?
Yeah.
They don't practice the correct teaching. They practice the Buddhism of harvest, frankly speaking.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm making that clarification because he's trying to. He's doing it much more politely than I will. We should join forces with like-minded individuals and organizations. Okay, so Nichiren Shu and Nichiren Shoshu are no longer like-minded organizations. They're exclusionary.
Yeah.
He says, our cause is not exclusionary. We are not the same. All right? Continuing. The most crucial thing is to foster individuals dedicated to establishing the correct teaching. How can they do that? Only by knowing the correct teaching. You can't establish the correct teaching if you don't know the correct teaching. You can't know the correct teaching if you don't study the Gosho. Straight up. All right? When one individual takes action to apply this principle in real life, they can reorient those around them in the direction of good and peace. Establishing the correct teaching ultimately comes down to producing a steady stream of courageous individuals committed to this mission. Maybe I'm one of them. The land, in establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land, means the land or realm where people dwell, while the peace of the land that is our goal means actualizing a Buddha land and building a realm of happiness and peace for all people. The term land, therefore, is not defined narrowly as a nation state, nor is it restricted to any particular country. And believe me, there are Nichiren schools that believe only the people of Japan. I won't get into it. How much sense would that make? And inclusiveness and eternal relevance, page 162, second column. The essential meaning of the peace of the land is the diametric opposite of nationalism. of nationalism. It is a concept of peace that is inclusive and open to the world. At the same time, it encompasses and is relevant to the future as well, because the Buddha land includes all Jampadvipa, the entire world, and will endure forever. I mispronounce that all the time. It's Jampadvipa. Okay, but what is he saying there? Let me say it again. The essential meaning of peace of the land is the diametric opposite of nationalism. It is a concept of peace that is inclusive and open to the world. At the same time, it encompasses and is relevant to the future as well, because the Buddha land includes all Jampadvipa, the entire world, and will endure forever. There's no separation. And if you see a separation because you're French and I'm an American, that's not correct thinking. That's not correct thinking. That's nationalism. I call myself, I'm an American. I'm not a living being. Okay? Get it? You may not agree with it. You may think French people are better than other people. I don't know. It might be true, actually. I don't know. But
they have a big problem with that because they are invaded by others.
Exactly. Well,
so what do you do in your country too? They are invaded by South Americans.
Okay. If
so
you're invaded by others, okay, do they have a Buddha nature?
Yes.
Okay, then I have to be concerned about their well-being. I can't not be concerned about their well-being or call them invaders. Okay, how are they invading?
But
by crossing,
you cannot take care of your own people. These people are coming. You cannot take care of them well.
We will have
so what do you do?
Again,
so you all die in a place, and until the end is coming, and this is it.
This is telling you how to not have that happen or be that way, or for that to even be in your heart.
No.
Okay, so listen, let's finish this and I'll get into that.
All over the world now.
I realize that. That's why I said this is so poignant and so important to understand correctly, because it is a correct teaching. Huh?
Yeah. India is going through this kind of things.
Yes, and it has to be overcome and corrected. It has to be overcome and corrected. What is Daisaku Ikeda saying? So we do something different? No. He's saying, what did Nichiren say? Did we do something different? No, we do what Nichiren said. You can see it as something so difficult. How are we going to do? How are we going to do?
So
that's the only thing.
With Kosen Rufu, and we create something political because you cannot deal with the other ones.
If you don't think that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo involves the political reality of the three of life, of course it does. Of course it does. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo includes everything. I've been talking about that this whole lecture because I knew we'd get to this point. Okay, where we're people that we don't like, that we don't care whether they live or die. We must have more respect for them than that. And if we don't, we're not going to get where we want to go. Yeah. Okay, it's cause and effect. So you can have any opinion you want to have. It's all being laid out very clearly here by people much wiser than me. That's why I don't take it upon myself to preach all this to you. Okay? So, I forgot where I'm at. Okay, the essential meaning of peace of the land is the diametric opposite of nationalism. Diametric opposite. Peace of the land is the diametric opposite of nationalism. That's what you just described. Okay, man, I understand. Let's stop there. Let's talk about what the teaching is.
Okay.
The teaching. He's not talking about the means. He's not talking about the mechanics. Okay? At the same time, it encompasses and is relevant to the future as well, because the Buddha land includes all where the invaders came from is also Jampadvipa. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, and will endure forever. Yeah. A land means a Buddha land means a society in which the Buddhist spirit of respect for human beings and life is vital and alive. Not that there are no difficulties in accommodating all those human beings and creating that, but we don't view them as other than they're the same as us. We view them as the same as us. That's very difficult. Nationalism does not view things that way. Okay?
Yes.
It creates distinctions.
Yeah.
A Buddha land means a society in which the Buddhist spirit of respect for human beings and life is vital and alive. It is a world that values the ideal of realizing happiness for ourselves and others. In this section, the Daishonin asserts that the threefold world, the real world in which we live, with invaders coming across the border. Oh my God! That even with invaders going across the border is a Buddha land and a treasure realm. It's just the distorted, it's delusion versus enlightenment, and how it's all in the eyes of the perceiver.
Yeah.
How you view those people as invaders, other people might view them as welcome guests. They could. It's possible. Okay? So, in this section, the Daishonin asserts that the threefold world, the real world in which we live, is a Buddha land and a treasure realm that will never decline or be destroyed as long as the treasures of the heart of those who reside there are not destroyed. As long as you still have the heart of the Buddha, the land will become an enduring Buddha land. Continuing, page 162, second column. Establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land is the fundamental spirit of the Soka Gakkai's people-centered movement. Mr. Makaguchi, who as an educator had embarked on a program of educational reform based on his wish for the happiness of all children, was deeply impressed on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. It was, in fact, one of the main reasons why he decided to start practicing Nichiren Buddhism, based on his belief that the sole purpose of religion's existence is to work for the happiness of humanity, which includes all humans, and make the world a better place. Mr. Makaguchi began to propagate Nichiren Buddhism openly and broadly throughout society. He stood up courageously during World War II, which he saw as the proper time to remonstrate with the Japanese militarist government of the day. Even though he went to prison as a result, he continued to fight for the happiness of the people up to the very end, ultimately dying for his beliefs. He wouldn't leave until they would listen to what he was saying. Second, Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda, fully prepared for a struggle with the devilish nature of authority, stood up alone in the devastated ruins of post-war Japan with the vow to rebuild the Soka Gakkai and the movement for Kosen Rufu. When at age 19, I had my own fateful first encounter with him at a discussion meeting in Kamada in Tokyo's Oto Ward. He was giving a lecture on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. I want to eliminate all misery and suffering from the face of the earth. Mr. Toda's lion's roar still resounds in my heart. Based on the shared vow of mentor and disciple, the three founding Soka Gakkai presidents have all dedicated their lives to the struggle of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land for the sake of the people's happiness and to free all from misery and suffering. The name Soka, which emerged from discussions between Mr. Makaguchi and Mr. Toda, means value creation. What kind of value, then, are we committed to creating? I believe it can be summed up as empowering suffering individuals we encounter by encouraging them to base their lives on the sound philosophy of the mystic law in order to realize peace and security for all people and the world. Both the practice of establishing the correct teaching and the mission of actualizing the peace of the land are encompassed in this spirit of Soka, or value creation, a spirit that treasures each individual and is dedicated to one-to-one dialogue. In that regard, I would like to declare for all to hear that the Soka Gakkai is the organization that is truly inherited and is faithfully carrying on the Daishonin struggle of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land in the present day. Page 163 from the Gosho. A classic of, page 163, second column. A classic of world peace and dialogue. This is the end. The guest said, since it concerns both this life and the lives to come, who could fail to be cautious in a matter such as this? Who could fail to agree with you? Now, when I examine the passages you have cited from the sutras and see exactly what the Buddha has said, I realize that slandering the law is a very grave fault indeed, that violating the law is in truth a terrible offense. I have put all my faith in one Buddha alone, Amida, and rejected all the other Buddhas. I have honored the three Pure Land Sutras and set aside the other sutras. But this was not due to any distorted views of my own conception. I was simply obeying the words of the eminent men of the past. And the same is true of all the other persons in the 10 directions. But now I realize that to do so means to exhaust oneself in futile efforts in this life, and to fall into the Avicii hell, the hell of incessant suffering, in the life to come. The texts you have cited are perfectly clear on this point, and their arguments the texts you have cited are perfectly clear on this point, and their arguments are detailed. They leave no room for doubt. And from now on, with your kind of instruction to guide me, I wish to continue dispelling the ignorance from my mind. I hope we may set about as quickly as possible, taking measures to deal with these slanderers against the law and to bring peace to the world without delay, thus ensuring that we may live in safety in this life and enjoy good fortune in the life to come. But it is not enough that I alone should accept and have faith in your words. We must see to it that others as well are warned of their errors. That's the end of the Gosho. On establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land is a work dedicated to actualizing, on page 164, first column, bottom. On establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land is a work dedicated to actualizing world peace with the aim of helping people to free themselves of suffering and realizing peace and security. It is also a classic of dialogue in which, through a question and answer format, the guest and host, concerned about the disasters that are plaguing the nation, together seek and finally agree on a way to put an end to them. In one sense, the guest, having had his erroneous understanding of Buddhism pointed out to him by the host, is angered and threatens to leave. But the host, smiling, restrains his guest and goes on speaking. In other words, he manages to prevent the guest from leaving by smiling, reaching out to him and continuing to explain his position calmly. Eventually, the guest is won over by the host's respectful treatment and measured arguments, and in return, Eventually, the guest is won over by the host's respectful treatment and measured arguments, and in turn expresses his respect for the host, acknowledging that he now understands his point. In response to this dramatic change in the guest, the host explains how gratifying you have associated with a friend in the orchid room and have become as straight as mugwort growing among hemp. In other words, he expresses delight that through his positive influence, the guest has become aware of the truth and put aside his mistaken convictions. And in this final section, the guest fully accepts the host's words and vows to join in his efforts. Here, the guest says that he understands the seriousness of slandering the law and the gravity of violating it. He also asserts that his adoption of the Nimbutsu teaching was not his own idea, but that he had simply followed the teaching of the eminent men of the past, specifically Honen. This points to a very important issue. Even today, people's evaluation or judgment about things tends to be influenced by the views and opinions of those around them, rather than guided by their own insight and beliefs. What's he saying there without saying it? We rely on what other people say around us for what we consider as fact and informational basis for how we're viewing things, rather than chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon and trying to bring forth through the teachings our Buddha wisdom to perceive them on our own in accord with the teachings, because we're capable of doing that. We don't have to be led by children forever. We just have to grow up. Okay? So he says, people are even more likely to take at face value the opinions of those in authority or power. That's what makes the responsibility, or what the news media says. half the time that's not necessarily the complete accurate depiction of what has actually occurred. It depends on the news outlet. What is their skewed position in the first place? I guarantee you won't find the same views expressed on CNA that are expressed on Taiwan Talks. I mean, it's just the way it is. That's what makes the responsibility of those in leadership positions so heavy. And the offense when they lead people astray so grave. Here the Daishonin also warns against this tendency. What did President Keita just say? I'm going to read that whole paragraph again. This points to a very important issue. Even today, people's evaluation or judgment about things tends to be influenced by the views and opinions of those around them, rather than guided by their own insights and beliefs. People are even more likely to take at face value the opinions of those in authority or power. That's what makes the responsibility of those in leadership positions so heavy, and the offense when they lead people astray so grave. Here the Daishonin also warns against this tendency. Do you hear what he's saying? There's a karma associated by misleading people,
Right.
whether intentionally or not unintentionally. All right. He sternly rebukes, because this could be leaders in the organization of Soka Gakkai, or this could be in society, or this could be in your community, in your family.
Yeah.
All right. He sternly rebukes as the root of evil not only the ideas that delude and bring unhappiness to people, but also that the high-ranking priests looked up to as authorities who promote such ideas. At the same time, people must learn to wisely detect evil. People must also learn to wisely detect evil. Allowing themselves to be deceived only harms them in the end. Inspired by a shared commitment, page 165. In return to the passage, the guest says that hearing the kind of teaching of the host has dispelled the ignorance from his mind. He then vows to set forth immediately to speak out against the slander of the law, bringing safety and security to society, and pray for peace in both the present and in future existences, transforming even an opponent into an ally. That is the very essence of our dialogues and our efforts to share Nichiren Buddhism with others. It is itself the model of true discussion. Key to this transformation is the host's response to the guest. He meets each expression of anger and doubt with tolerance and careful explanation, deepening the dialogues as he creates an inspirational heart-to-heart encounter, not an argument, a dialogue. In conclusion, the guest says, but it is not enough that I alone should accept and have faith in your words. We must see to it that others as well are warned of their errors. This is a declaration by the guest that he shares the host's vow for establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. I can't help feeling that there is great significance in the fact that on establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land ends not with a statement by the host, but with a vow by the guest. I believe the guest's words express the principle of Kosen Rufu, of a steady stream of successors rising to action to realize the ideal of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. So that's not just about us, it's about everybody that's hearing this on video as well. It's everywhere all over the world. Okay, a steady stream. That means it never stops. There are always people entering and beginning, and always people completing their mission and death.
Yes.
Do you understand?
Yes.
I believe the guest's words express the principle of Kosen Rufu, a steady stream of successors rising to action to realize the ideal of establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land. Dialogue bringing people closer together. This treatise thus ends with the with the guest vibrantly expressing his determination. What we learn from this is that at the end of one dialogue serves as a starting point of another. Buddhism affirms the power of dialogue. Though our discussions may not seem to have an immediate effect, they activate the Buddha nature in the persons we are talking with. The seeds of Buddhahood sprout through causation, and for this reason, the Buddhists, preach the single vehicle, the mystic law. The only way to bring forth the Buddha nature is through the engagement based on the ultimate causation. That is the mystic law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The more we speak out and share the truth as practitioners of the mystic law, the more people we help to form a connection with Nichiren Buddhism. With the start of April, a new spring of dialogue is here. While courageously challenging our own human revolution, let us create a groundswell of dialogue, reaching out to talk with one person after another to change society and bring peace and happiness to all people. Establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land is the same as working for world peace. I'll say it again. Establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land is the same as working for world peace. Let us continue to expand our network for good through the peaceful means of dialogue. Our dialogues are a struggle to revive the power of human beings. Our dialogues change society, unite the world, and change the future. Our dialogues impart hope. They have the power to revitalize others and awaken them to their inner potential. And they are imbued with courage, conviction, and the cause for victory. Our dialogues for establishing the correct teaching for the peace of the land will build an age of the people through the power of faith in the human being. And we won't have a first meeting of February. We'll have a second meeting of February. Okay, right? Okay, and so we finished this. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you.